American corporation that creates electronic cigarettes in 2015. The technology was developed and marketed as a safer alternative to traditional cigarettes. Juul is a unique brand when it comes to the technology used in its devices called ENDS, which stands for Electronic Nicotine Delivery System. This includes a closed system that prevents tampering and battery and temperature control. A study diving into the demographics of Juul noted that the corporation made up of 75% of the American electronic cigarette market in 2019. Data from the same research showed more Juul consumers were between 15 to 20 rather than 20 to 29 years old. Moreover, a health survey conducted in 2020 showed that 20% of high school users used an e-cigarette within the last 30 days. As data such as the ones mentioned started to come out, several lawsuits have been filed against the company. Now the company is facing almost lawsuits, most of them claiming misleading marketing directed towards the youth and downplaying health risks. In 2020, they were ordered to halt sales under the restrictions of the FDA. I will focus on a specific class action case to demonstrate some of the recurrent claims about Juul. In Colgate versus Juul Labs Incorporated, the plaintiffs argued that Juul used a specific advertising strategies that traditional cigarette companies have used to target the youth. The principal methods are the use of billboards, sponsorship deals, free sample distribution, paying people or film productions to use their product, the sale of flavored products, and the distribution to minors. The case also states that the synthetic chemical used in Juul pods, similar to the classic nicotine use, is in fact, quote, more addictive and dangerous than a normal cigarette because it delivers more nicotine up to 4 times faster, unquote. The specifics of Juul's marketing campaign tactics are reviewed in detail in the same report. Some strategies include the imagery of a cool, youthful look to their vaporized ads, such as the one presented on the slide, comparing Juul to the, quote, iPhone of vapes, and the use of flavors appealing to youth. An example of this is in one of their ads, they use the tagline, quote, indulge in the dessert without the spoon, unquote. In this presentation, we will take a closer look at the corporate governance lapses and decisions that the board of directors made, which allowed the harmful practices to occur. We will investigate where and how the board violated its fiduciary duties by marketing and targeting young adults and teens for their e-cigarette products.
As Bianca mentioned, we will be taking a closer look at Juul's corporate governance lapses and violation of its fiduciary duties that allowed these harmful practices to occur. In particular, we will be focusing our discussion on the duty of care and the negligence of Juul directors. In the 4,000 lawsuits that Juul is facing or has faced, there have been a few main claims that plaintiffs have used, which include a breach of implied warranty, negligence in warning of the dangers of the product, intentional misrepresentation, strict liability in cases with product defects. In fact, Juul lawsuits have increased with such popularity that there is an abundance of online resources which direct and assist potential claimants on how to join class action suits or file individual claims with Juul. They advise claimants to collect evidence such as receipts of Juul product purchases, medical records that prove symptoms associated with the e-cigarette use, and witnesses to claimants suffering from Juul use. The main case that we will be discussing is Colgate versus Juul. Bradley Colgate, the plaintiff, represents a nationwide class and numerous subclasses in multiple claims, such as false advertising, product liability, and several types of negligence, just to name a few. The plaintiff argues that Juul has broken the law by using deceptive actions to sell tobacco products to minors. For example, Juul has used hashtag advertising, non-age restricted email subscription lists, paid influencers with younger followings to promote their products. The plaintiff argues that many of their tactics employed as advertising strategies would have been unlawful for a traditional tobacco company. As well, the plaintiff argues that misrepresentation and omissions about the nicotine content, addictiveness, and healthiness of its products were likely to mislead a reasonable consumer. To this, Jewel argues that plaintiffs' claims about the alleged emissions are insufficient because there is no duty to warn beyond the FDA's labeling requirements and the state of California's Prop 65 requirement, because the risks of nicotine have been well known for decades. So, what does its deceptive marketing mean in terms of the board's fiduciary duties? A large majority of arguments revolve around how Juul's board of directors owed claimants a reasonable duty of care, and as such, because the companies breached this duty, thousands of children and adolescents have suffered from severe medical problems. The duty of care requires directors to make decisions that pursue the corporation's interests with reasonable diligence and prudence. As well, directors must proceed on a fully informed basis when conducting business, whether this means being informed of all relevant material information to proceeding with a critical eye in assessing information. In this case, the directors clearly breached the duty of care, as they did not think critically when deciding to target their products and create advertisements towards youth where the impacts of e-cigarettes are scientifically proven to be very detrimental to their health and brain development. Thus, it is clear that directors were motivated solely by revenues and profits when allowing their advertisements to be targeted towards adolescents.
As Alex has mentioned, one of the allegations in the current class action lawsuit is that directors have breached their duty of care by failing to adequately monitor the company's marketing strategy that has targeted youth and resulted in mass addictions. The directors' failure to fulfill their duty of care can result in financial problems for the shareholders, such as devaluation of stocks. Hence, while directors have a primary duty to the shareholders, they're expected to consider the interests of the consumers when making decisions as it impacts the corporation's value. Dual directors can be argued to be responsible for breaching several fiduciary duties and harming the consumers, which brings us to our second possible breach, duty to monitor. While the duty of care requires the directors to review all available relevant information in a reasonable manner to make company decisions, the duty to monitor requires the directors to monitor the corporation's compliance with laws, standards, and internal protocols. Hence, directors can be held personally liable for breaching the duty to monitor if they knew or should have known that the corporation was violating the law, they took no steps in good faith to prevent or remedy the situation, and their failure to monitor caused harm to the plaintiff, which is highlighted in Stone versus Ritter. In this section, we will explore whether dual directors have breached their duty to monitor. Caremark emphasized that timely information about potential issues or red flags is essential in order for the board to perform its supervisory and monitoring role. Hence, the Caremark doctrine imposed the duty of monitoring on company boards with respect to mission-critical risks, which are, as Klasmeyer illustrates, prevalent in companies that manufacture and market products regulated by the FDA. Since FDA regulates tobacco and nicotine products, Juul company board is tasked with duty to monitor. Consider that directors need to ensure that Juul complies with applicable regulations, allowing the marketing strategies to continue and not addressing the potential risks involved resulted in a breach. Hence, to continue market to underage youth was an oversight by the directors. These marketing strategies and lack of adequate age verification resulted in underage use of Juul products and harm to the youth that the company did not take sufficient action to prevent. Marchant versus Barnhill illustrated that companies and their directors will be liable if they fail to properly monitor risk associated with their operations. While Bluebell breached their duty due to a failure of monitoring a safety risk at the company's production facility, similar legal thinking can be applied to Juul, considering that it's also sued for not disclosing the health risks associated with their products. Furthermore, Sec versus BP, where BP made material misrepresentations and omitted no material information, can also be applied, considering that Juul was aware of the health risks associated with products. It claimed it was safer than traditional cigarettes, and it continued to market strategies that it was warned to take action, which it did not comply with. This would be in line with Stone, which held that oversight liability can be established if the directors deliberately ignored red flags as to potential issues. All in all, if it could be demonstrated that the directors were aware of the marketing strategies employed and the misleading health information, a breach of the duty of loyalty can be established in addition to duty of care Alex has mentioned. The restrictiveness of the court's language in Re Citigroup shareholder derivative litigation implies that the Delaware judiciary is likely to limit the finding of oversight liability to the most extreme instances of bad faith. Hence, the threshold is high as directors are not expected to monitor every part of a company's operation, and gross negligence needs to be proven, as they will need to have the space to make business decisions. Questions regarding social responsibility of corporations can also be raised. Juul's failure to meet its obligations breach the trust of its shareholders. It could even be proposed that Juul has higher social responsibility obligations due to the nature of the e-cigarette industry. Considering that there are no conclusive studies on long-term health risks of e-cigarettes, Juul was responsible to ensure that its product did not pose a risk to public health.
Well, having said all that, the reform we would like to implement is the creation of a public governance duty. This may be controversial since it can appear to be against the main prerogatives of corporate governance. The current contention is that corporate profit maximization provides jobs and other public benefits that exceed any harms corporation may cause. Furthermore, specific regulatory requirements can, in certain cases, mitigate this harm without greatly affecting the corporation's ability to generate wealth. Nonetheless, it has already been proposed that for some contexts, such as systemic economic harm, it would be necessary to regulate the governance of corporations in general, not only apply specific requirements to mitigate the potential damage. In our opinion, the same applies to the goal of public health. A public governance duty may appear at first to be incompatible with some governance models, such as the contractarian model of governance that sees corporations as a nexus of contracts. This is because members of the public are not contracting parties. However, such as in any contracts, the government can limit the freedom of contracting when the contract severely affects the public. So, why are specific regulatory requirements not enough in this case? Regarding these products that can affect public health, there are already systems in place that try to mitigate this harm. There can be no ads on TV incentivizing these products. The packaging on cigarettes must contain warning about the health risks, etc. But these are clearly not enough in this case. Juul managed to get around the legislation by creating flavors that specifically attract kids, such as cotton candy or bubblegum, and giving support to influencers whose viewers are young and impressionable. These acts are in accordance with the shareholder primacy model. The more people use the products, the best it is for the stakeholders. To change this attitude, there must be a mitigating duty to the general public, in addition to simply having to serve the shareholders. So, this should be a duty with a high bar in order to breach it, insofar as it can have too much of a cooling effect on the corporation's growth. The standard of truth would be comparable to that of Caremark claims, being necessary to prove that a board of directors did not do a good faith efforts to prevent the specific public harm being analyzed. In the case of Juul, it would be possible, with all the information presented so far, to prove that the company did not make a good faith efforts to prevent their products from being used by minors. So, in the case that the public governance duty were to be enforced, it should come with some transparency in the decision-making process. This would ensure that claims of breach of such a duty could be more easily evaluated. The subjective approach of simply considering the cost of benefits to the public the same way one would consider the costs and benefits of any decision would not be effective here for three reasons. First, the consequences of severely affecting public health are severe enough that the decision-making process to mitigate this harm should be transparent. Second, directors and managers could be peer pressured into making decisions that greatly harm the public if they were beneficial enough to the corporation. And third, a more clear notation of the decision-making process could serve as a safe harbor for directors and managers in good faith that are facing litigation. So public governance duty would not be a way of putting the public interest above all the interests of the corporation. Corporations could still, through comprehensible decision-making, take actions that serve more their own private interests than the public's. This new duty would simply force corporations to take the public into account among their many other variables in making decisions. And with this into play, Juul will not be able to continue marketing their products to underage people, since we would clearly breach the public good more than could be accepted under this duty.